Yay. Hey, we're on a roll now. So welcome everyone to the Step Code Lunch and Learn. There were about 80 people signed up for this, so it's a popular topic right now, knowing what's coming on May 1st. And today my computer's thinking. My name is Gaytan Kerrigan. I work for the Community Energy Association. I'm going to do the welcome and introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to the stars of the show, Hugo Wong from Building Safety Standard Branch, as well as Amanda McIntyre calling in from Nelson, and the zone representative for the Building Officials Association of British Columbia. And then I'm going to follow up with some step code resources. I mentioned earlier and invited you to put your name, the local government, and the role that you are playing in today's presentation. And we're going to get started here. So before I get going, I just like to recognize that I'm calling in from Fernie, BC, which is Ktunaxa Amakas, the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa First Nation. And if you would like to acknowledge in the chat of where you're calling in from and the lands that you occupy. If you don't know that, you can go to nativeland.ca and see whose land you're on today. So first, a little bit about Community Energy Association and why we're supporting step code implementation. CEA is a nonprofit that exclusively supports local governments and Indigenous communities on climate and energy activities. We've been around for more than 25 years, and we're on the front lines of helping communities plan, develop capacity, and implement real solutions. And step code is one of those solutions in the building sector. So just a really quick introduction to step code and to show you that this resource exists. There's a 4-minute animated video on all the basics of step code if you needed to send that to any clients or other colleagues of yours or anyone who's looking for just a basic introduction to step code. So the energy step code regulates energy consumption and efficiency of buildings. And as of May 1st, most new construction in BC is going to be required to be 20% more energy efficient than base 2018 building code. The newly introduced zero carbon step code will regulate the carbon emissions associated with operating buildings. And although this is a super interesting topic, it's not going to be the main focus of today's webinar. Through energy modeling and quality assurance checks, the performance pathway of the energy step code quantifies 3 things in new construction. It's airtightness, the envelope quality, so looking at things like insulation levels, the windows and doors, the orientation of the building, and then the mechanical system efficiency. And this is just a diagram. You may have seen it lots of times of the basic strategies that will get you to a step 3 part 9 house or 20% better. So we're boosting insulation, we're doing ventilation smartly, we're looking at those efficiencies of the mechanical systems. There's banding thermal bridging, there's sealing it up, meaning that's looking at the airtightness, and then thinking about your doors and windows. And the performance pathway process of the energy step code is we're making an energy model of the home before we get going. We do some design optimization, working with the energy advisor to say, hey, what's the best option here? Should we really put lots of insulation here, or should we simply change the orientation to more southward and fewer windows on the north? Things like that. We can do a mid-construction airtightness test to make sure that things are tickety-boo before we seal it up, and then making those repairs later is really costly. And then there's a final site inspection and reporting, and perhaps if you're aiming higher than that 20% better in the step 4 or 5 range in the step code for part 9, then maybe there's some rebates available for that energy efficiency. And then I'd just like to turn it over to Hugo as soon as I stop sharing my screen here.
Thanks, Gaytan. It may take me a second to just push the right buttons here. Okay. Are folks seeing everything okay?
It's great.
Okay, let me see if I can swap screens here. Still working? Gaten, you're on mute.
We can see your presentation mode. So I think you just have to reshare the screen that you want the presentation.
Yes, there we go. Every time. How about now?
Perfect.
All right. Thanks for bearing with me. Hi, everyone. My name is Hugo Wong, and I work at the Building and Safety Standards branch. We're part of the Ministry of Housing for the province of British Columbia. Thanks so much to Gaetan for inviting me here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing any questions that you might have about this topic. We're really interesting times building code wise, and yeah, I'm happy to see this thing out in the world starting on May the 1st. I'm calling from Victoria, BC, which is the territory of the Lekwungen people, now known as Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. It'll take about 15 minutes, I think, for me to run through my slides, maybe a little less. Some of you may want more or less detail on certain topics on the presentation. So I look forward to expanding on certain things, or if I don't know, referring you to a colleague on the technical side who can maybe reply to you a little after the presentation. So I'm mainly going to talk about what's coming on May the 1st, do a quick overview of changes for simple and complex buildings, as well as a little bit of consideration that folks on the local government side might want to make as things change. So I want to just quickly go over the changes for Part 3 buildings or large buildings. They're mainly applicable to the group C, D, and E occupancies. Those are the most commonly built buildings in British Columbia. So residential buildings, businesses, malls, small retail stores, that kind of thing. And so for those who have already built to step 2 for large buildings, these requirements are largely unchanged, but there are just a few minor tweaks and revisions. As I said, they're for the most commonly built archetypes, so that's like office buildings, residential, hotels, motels, that kind of thing, with a performance-based code and no prescriptive option. Slightly stricter metrics for office and retail because the National Energy Code for buildings upped their own baselines. So we want it to be a little bit better. We want to keep being 20% better than those requirements. So we raised them a little bit. And for public sector occupancies, so A and B type occupancies, which is this informal catch-all term that relates to schools, libraries, colleges, rec centers, hospitals, that kind of thing. We found that these buildings really vary widely in terms of their energy use. So there's no single simple target. So more work needs to be done, but we wanted to see some improvements. So they'll be modeled to Part 8 of the National Energy Code for buildings. There's a new air tightness testing methodology, which is added just to harmonize with the National Building Code, but the existing ones are not going away. And these changes, in theory, should happen automatically and should not require bylaw changes. Although, of course, check with your lawyers to make sure that is indeed the case. So a little bit about the zero carbon step code for large buildings. It's opt-in, just as it is for small buildings. This on the screen is an excerpt from the building code, which lists the types of buildings that are covered by the zero carbon step code, exactly the same ones covered by energy step code. So you'll see instead of using the plain language terms moderate, low, or zero carbon performance, as you might hear publicly, you'll see EL 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's because we heard during the public review process in the winter that experience code users wanted a more specific term to reduce ambiguity. So we'll use the letters and numbers when we're addressing technical audiences, and we'll use the plain language terms like moderate, low, or zero for most other people. Just a little caveat here. You can see EL4, which we're referring to as the zero carbon performance level. It's not truly zero. It says 2 or 1.8 or 1.5 or that kind of thing. That's not truly zero. And that's because the electricity grid is 98% clean, but it's not quite 100% clean. And so when those numbers change the numbers in the code will change with it. If you're connected to connecting to district energy, that emissions factor will be determined by the local government. So in the code, conventional natural gas and electricity are listed as acceptable energy types. District energy is an unrestricted matter, so that can be handled between the local government and the developer. And renewable natural gas is not a compliance option for the zero carbon step code at this time, because there's no way during the design and construction phase to determine if buildings will use renewable natural gas for the long term. So now that I've kind of gone over the code language, I just wanted to show you the 3 levels for part 3 buildings, and a lot of these are transferable to small buildings as well, the general concepts at least. In short, the moderate carbon performance step, it's likely that you would be decarbonizing your heating, whereas you could potentially use conventional combustion for water heating and cooking. For strong carbon performance, it's likely you would have to decarbonize both space heating and hot water. Entirely possible that cooking could use conventional natural gas. And for zero carbon performance, there would be zero carbon for all end uses. There are certain fine details about what is and is not included in the modeling. So things like natural gas fireplaces, gas dryers, that kind of thing. And we'll have more information in a technical bulletin on this in the coming weeks. So let's talk about Part 9 buildings. So again, for those who have built to step 3 already for Part 9 buildings, these requirements are largely unchanged. Step 3 will be the minimum for most buildings in British Columbia come May the 1st. Energy modeling and air tightness testing will also be the default across BC by May the 1st. Now, there are some communities that are interested in a prescriptive option, maybe because energy advisor capacity is a little thin where they are, or travel costs might be high to bring them in. And so in that case, a local authority could establish a bylaw allowing for buildings within Part 9 to comply with 936.2 to 936.4. It basically turns back on the prescriptive part of the code that for most people will be turned off starting May the 1st. But if a local government decides to activate those new prescriptive requirements, they will find that the prescriptive energy requirements have gone up approximately 20%, which is supposed to basically approximate the performance gain that would be given if they were to do the step 3 performance approach. For example, you'll also see that an HRV or heat pump is required in that prescriptive requirements to save energy. There are no prescriptive requirements for steps 4 or 5, just step 3. And finally, just a little bit about log homes. We've done some research indicating that they have some trouble meeting 20% better despite following the energy efficient building practices that are recommended. So therefore, the previous base 2018 BC Building Code requirements will apply to those buildings. So let's talk a little bit about the zero carbon step code for Part 9 buildings. The first option is the performance option, which you see on the screen, and there's a prescriptive option, which I'll go into a little later. So each level doesn't prescribe how you achieve these targets, just like with energy. But there are some logical ways we think to achieve them, and that's why we've set the numbers the way they are. Just like for large buildings, to achieve the moderate zero carbon step, decarbonize your space heating. For low, decarbonize both space and hot water heating. And for zero carbon, decarbonize everything. So you'll see on the screen here that there's 3 columns, an allowance column, intensity, and a cap. And there's effectively 3 different paths, and they're optimized for the different size home that you're building. The allowance you see on the far left is optimal for small houses. The middle column is most applicable to medium-sized homes. That's your average single-family house. And then the cap on the right is most applicable to very large single-family homes. Now, why did we choose to put, 3 paths out there? Primarily, it's because different calculation methodologies favor different building sizes. So for example, a small building, like a small house under say 1,100 square feet, be really hard pressed for them to meet the figures in the middle. However, for large homes, it's maybe a little too easy for them to meet. And so that's why we've kind of created these tracks. You can use them all, regardless of the size of the home that you build, but we think there's a logical choice to be made. So this is the code table. This is the kind of technical, fully detailed version of the graphic that was in the previous slide. So there again are some fine details when it comes to modeling, and I would really suggest that you talk to your energy advisor to work them out during the design phase. For example, if you have a large shared lobby in a Part 9 building, for example, that I think exceeds 20% of the floor area, they're rare, but they can happen. New provincial checklists are really being developed to help everyone report the emissions and energy use of their buildings. So that's the Part 9 compliance calculator that you're probably used to. We're developing a new version here at the branch, and we're looking to release a beta version of that for user testing in the next 2-ish weeks or so. So look out for that. We'll also have technical bulletins coming out, which will provide a little bit more information about how to calculate supplemental heating and ancillary uses. We know we've received this question before, so wood fireplaces are excluded from carbon calculations entirely, so that they can be installed at any level of the zero carbon step code for decorative purposes or backup in the event of power outages. Wood burning stoves and gas fireplaces can also be included for some of those higher levels, but we are working to at least incorporate the emissions from those into the calculus, because right now the modeling methodologies aren't quite sophisticated enough to capture them. So right now they are excluded, but we are hoping to at least account for their emissions in the future. That being said, we've heard really loud and clear that if the power fails in cold climates, people need a way to stay warm. And so as we work to refine those calculation methodologies, we will continue to check in with rural communities, colder communities, to ensure that they have that confidence as buildings decarbonize. Just starting to wrap up here, but I just wanted to touch on a few implementation considerations for local governments. So some local governments currently incentivize low carbon energy systems, such as electric heat pumps, by lowering step code requirements. So some local governments might require, say, the top step for all buildings, but might relax it if they see that a low carbon energy system is installed. We consider that an incentive, not a requirement. And so a really similar approach can continue to exist for local governments. The caveat being they cannot require a technical building requirement that is in conflict with the BC Building Code. Our hope that the updates to the Energy Step Code and the new Zero Carbon Step Code will increase consistency among local governments. So after May the 1st, only steps 3, 4, and 5 will be available, therefore reducing the range of potential requirements. The additional detail that we've included in the Zero Carbon Step Code is also intended to provide a clearer framework for local governments who want to reduce their carbon emissions from buildings. And our expectation and our hope is that local governments will move on from whatever the existing low carbon energy system relaxations are, or different GHGI incentives towards the new provincial approach. So we are currently working with our partners to develop some best practice guidance for reducing emissions in new construction, just like we did for energy in 2018. In the meantime, there are some existing best practices that are a good place to start. So in general, projects in progress with building permits submitted under a previous building code should adhere to that previous code. And we'll develop more guidance on this topic soon, because we know it's not always quite that clear cut. Regional consistency is a really big driver of success. So if like-minded local communities collaborate on a timeline and policy approach, it saves staff time, it reduces confusion for builders. So common forms and deadlines and processes are something that we're really trying to encourage by things like the compliance forms and calculators. So if anyone's building Part 3 buildings, we've just released a beta version of the Part 3 design checklist for users to test, and they can go to the link on the PowerPoint slide for that. We'll also be updating the Part 9 tool, and that beta will be released in about 2 weeks or so. And as local governments are looking to update their policies for energy and emissions in buildings, we're really encouraging them to really consult with industry to hear the kind of concerns they might have, and to provide training or to point folks towards training that are going to really help smooth out the rollout of any new requirements or incentives. So that's it from me. Thanks so much. And yeah, I look forward to hearing your questions either now or at the end. I'm going to leave it to the host to figure that out.
There was a lot of activity going on in the chat while you were presenting,
Oh boy.
Hugo. And lucky for us, there are several experts on the line that seem to be answering lots of those questions. So maybe we will move on to Amanda's presentation, and I encourage you to stay active in the chat, and then we'll see what happens at the end here.
Sure.
Thank you. Looks good, Amanda. And you're still muted.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. I'm Amanda, building official from the City of Nelson. For those of you that either attend or have attended the BCIT step code and building science course, some of this is going to be repetition for you. Yeah, so I'm just doing kind of a high level building official perspective regarding the roles and responsibility as to how we would go through a step code project, as well as touch a little bit on the new zero carbon code updates. Okay, so we're gonna go. What you're gonna learn are, we'll go over the pre-construction compliance forms, what happens during construction, and what happens upon completion. And I just want to mention we're covering, this is part 9 reference here. Part 3, you have professionals that are involved that you would work with. So it's similar to how you would work with any engineers and architects. So this is mostly about part 9, and we'll go through the part 9 compliance forms, which are also being updated, but they will be similar to this. So it'll be the similar process. I just want to mention that we have the BC Energy Step Code Handbook for building officials, and we're working with BSSB in updating that. So that's going to be coming soon. Hugo and I were just talking about that before everyone joined in. Oh, you can't see it. There it is. And you can get a PDF copy of this either from the BC or the BOABC website, or it is also available at energystepcode.ca. So this is a typical energy step code compliance permitting process flow chart that's also from that that helpful handbook. And even though everything's being updated, this is still relevant. You would still reference this for processing any permits coming in. Yeah, so each section here, each line, there is a line for building officials, a line for the general contractors and the applicant, as well as one here for the energy advisor. So everybody that has a role, it's got kind of steps and processes for each. So it's definitely something that I have printed out. And when we started implementing step code, I had beside me to reference and yeah, and guide. It's a very helpful guide. This is, we'll start from going for, or we'll start with the pre-construction compliance and what happens when you get an application at the plan review stage. So this is a sample of the pre-construction compliance form that is in the handbook. You'll see here on the the right-hand side, there's some writing in green, and that is helpful for building officials and plan reviewers intakes to notice what we're looking for. So we want to see the pre-construction, whether it's pre-construction or as built, it will be noted in the top. They'll have some information, general information about the project. So you want to make sure that they're submitting the actual form for the right address. That's really important. And the bulk of it here in section B is going to be reflective of the building characteristics. So what the walls are, the wall assemblies are, what the foundation assemblies are, all of that sort of stuff, and how the model was designed to reflect the certain code or the certain step that the applicant is wishing to achieve. So as of May 1st, the minimum will be step 3. And yeah, so these are the RSI values here, as well as the efficiency values for your mechanical systems. It's got your U values for your windows. And what we're doing when we receive all of this is we're taking these compliance forms, and when we do our plan review, we're cross-referencing them with the drawings, with the window specifications, with the wall schedules, making sure everything is consistent, because we want to make sure that the building is actually constructed to what the design is. And if there are inconsistencies, which many times there are, you'll note it as a deficiency and send it back to the applicant to have them work with their energy advisor to update the form or have the drawings updated to reflect the model. And okay, just checking to see what you guys are seeing. So yeah, so this is a little simple checklist of what we would be looking for when we're doing that plan review. So the effective R values, there's roof, wall, foundation. This is all listed in that section B of the compliance forms. Checking window specifications as well as the drawings, cross-referencing with the window schedules. It's got the efficiency ratings and U factors listed in this section of the compliance form as well. The air barrier strategy, which is going to be one of the biggest changes from prescriptive, is ensuring that they highlight the air barrier strategy and note it correctly on the plans with what has been prescribed in the compliance model. We're also looking at the equipment efficiencies. So double checking that anything that's noted on the plans or specifications is also compliant with what has been spec'd out on the compliance form. And as we mentioned, the forms are currently being updated, and you can get the most recent ones from the energystepcode.ca, and this is where you can find those compliance forms. I know there was a question in the chat. Oh, someone might be. Thank you. Okay, so next we're going to go on site. So the same thing, we want to bring that energy compliance form with us on site, because this is basically like the recipe card for the building meeting compliance with the energy step code, as well as the zero carbon step code, which I will get to at the end and show you where that is. So when you go on site, here I'm showing that the walls are, they match what the energy step code has, or sorry, the energy compliance form has written in the description here. A lot of times I'll go to site, especially with windows, and the window tags are not consistent with what's outlined on the compliance form, which is right here. So you can see the U factor highlighted here is 1.31. And sometimes we'll see it at like 1.6 or something like that. So it's definitely a deficiency that you want to mark or note, and the contractor will then contact their energy advisor. They'll rerun the model and see if it fits. And if it doesn't, then there might need to be some on-site construction alteration. Yeah. So moving on, we have at the end of a project prior to occupancy, we'll receive the as-built compliance form. So this is done after the energy advisor goes to site and performs their final blower door test. And they will submit an as-built compliance form, which looks very similar to the pre-construction. It will just basically outline the construction that has been built. So again, you want to take that in cost reference with your inspection reports, noting that it is consistent with what you've seen on site. Sometimes it comes back that either maybe they don't achieve the right air tightness because they didn't pay attention enough to their air barrier. So there needs to be some more work done. They might not meet the minimum step, which is coming up step 3, and it's also step 3 here in the city of Nelson. So yeah, so there's different options for someone if they don't meet compliance. We always, first off, we want to give them the chance to correct the issue and see if there's a way that they can bring the building into compliance, which is the construction changes. Or in the end, if they can't meet something that is in the building code or your building bylaw, it would be a non-conformance, and it could end up in notice on title. I have yet to see this happen. Usually they find a way to fix it, even if they have to go and start taking off cladding to fix their air barrier, but I have yet to see that. It's usually, I find it's a lot easier, and contractors are quite surprised at what they are actually building to now that it's something that can be measured, and it's turned into like a healthy competition. And yeah, I don't think it's something that we'll see often. And I do want to mention, we did mention that there is that prescriptive pathway option for folks in areas that might not have access to energy advisors. And so as a part of the public review process, the prescriptive pathway was the minimum code. Now it's performance. So you have to adopt into the prescriptive pathway. And so while that was happening, I created a prescriptive compliance tool. It basically looks a lot like our pre-construction compliance forms, but it's more focused on the prescriptive calculations based on what they're installing in their building envelope. And I also include some of the information from the notes of the applicable sections in the code. I kind of did it as it's like a 27-page document, kind of to scare people off, because I didn't want to have extra work when I was reviewing applications. And thank you to Hugo and the team at BSSB for making that decision and not making it the minimum prescriptive pathway. But yes, this is also still available. I have the document. It works for all zones. Yeah, and if you guys want a copy of that, I'm happy to share it. Okay, so now I will touch a little bit on the zero carbon specified or simplified. Actually, Hugo showed similar to this, and I just wanted to kind of reiterate that whether you're in part 9 or part 3, this is the basics, is what the moderate level, or EL2 is what we'll most likely be referring it to. It is fossil fuel water heating and cooking allowed. Your space heating must be zero carbon. So the different explanations for the different steps, which Hugo touched on. These again are the tables. The top table there is from part 937, and you could see I've highlighted the performance or measured options. And one thing about those middle sections there, if you can't meet the absolute requirement, you move to that middle section and you have to meet both of those metrics for achieving that certain level of the step code. And yeah, and then the prescriptive, and as we were saying, the part 3 buildings, there is no prescriptive option there. And what I also want to show you is that the information that is outlined on these tables, we're already getting it from the energy modeling software. It's already coming out on the compliance forms. And as a part of that, we were able, as the City of Nelson, was able to use that data to bring to our council when we went to request to opt into the zero carbon step code. So I'll show you here. So this is page 3 from the current compliance forms. And as you can see, the information that you would need to determine if the actual building, this is from an as-built, is compliant with the requirements in the step code. They are highlighted right here, and I have a blow up. So these are two examples of compliance forms from 2 different builds here in Nelson. The bottom was a step 3 home, and you can see that it would not meet any level of the zero carbon step code. Even though it still met step 3 of the energy step code. And the top one, you can see that it achieved step 5 for the energy step code, and also achieved the net zero requirement for, or sorry, carbon zero requirement for the energy, or for the zero step code, which is EL4. And this is all I have for you guys. Open to questions.
Amanda, Andy's beaten you to lots of the questions already.
I'm
So
glad
it's
I
a real,
asked him to come in.
it's a real tag team
Sorry,
teamwork
Amanda.
here. So thanks very much.
I appreciate it.
Me too, Andy.
Yeah, like I say, for most of the members, I'll be kind of at the spring conference again, going over a lot of this and hopefully using Amanda's excellent slides, because I don't want to have to develop or reinvent the wheel again. So
Yeah,
thanks,
and
Amanda, for doing this.
we can also say from our perspective, if there are folks on the webinar here that the step code is new to them, feel free to reach out to us. It might seem scary at first, but really getting comfortable and trusting those energy advisors. They are professional, they do know what they're doing, and they are very helpful. Yeah, I really appreciate the extra set of eyes. I appreciate the fact that drawings come in more complete now. Yeah, it's just a nicer process as a building official now that these the step codes are being introduced.
And do attend a pressurized home for an air tightness test, because seeing is believing. And if you don't believe that air tightness matters, definitely go attend one of those and you'll change your mind on that. There was a question in the chat just regarding Reynolds, and I don't want to dip into that to confuse everyone, because there seems to be getting sort of a buzz in the community about that. That yeah, Reynolds are dealt with the same way a Reno is currently. And if you are requiring them to upgrade the whole home to prescriptive, do read part or Division A, Part 1, the requirements for existing buildings before you guys go down that rabbit hole. And then I think Amanda has reached out to Tyler and Scott, I believe at BSSB, just regarding additions to existing homes on what part of the code they will be required to meet. So there should be something coming on that. Don't panic. You'll have something by May 1st. I'm sure Hugo will see to that. Otherwise, yeah, like I say, Amanda's already got a bee in everyone's ear about that. So
Yes, and there was a question about so where will all of these numbers for greenhouse gas be found? Are the appliances rated? So Hugo, do you want to talk to that, or do you want me to? I was just going to explain where it's found on the compliance form.
Yeah, maybe, well, yeah, maybe start there and I can chime in a little later.
Okay. Okay. So the energy advisor in their software, they will they will select the type of information that's applicable to the appliances, for instance, or the heating type. It's based on fuel, mostly around the fuel type that is powering these systems. And the model is able to, the software is able to spit that out in um, and make it a part of the model as well as into the compliance forms. But Hugo, you might have a better
Yeah.
answer than me.
Yeah, no, that's basically it, right? The software calculates approximately how much energy is required to heat the home, and you input whether it uses conventional natural gas, electricity, or something else, and it'll provide a value for you, and you can see whether or not that value meets a certain level of the zeros carbon step code that you're aiming for.
Oh, yes. And we do have that 3-hour webinar that we did last week that we can share. The Gaitan's going to share the link to that.
I'm not sure that's accurate, Amanda, because
Oh.
I'm not a BOABC member.
I can share it. Oh, it's a Vimo. I sent it to my mom, so I know that everyone else can see it. So I'll send you that link.
That's amazing.
I sent
So
it to
please
my
send
mom.
it to me too.
Okay. Hugo's laughing.
Amanda's mom is very supportive of her
In
career
Ontario.
choice.
She's like, that's too much.
I thought building
Excellent.
official was a family business.
No, and they're in Ontario, so it's even worse. Okay.
Okay,
We would
wonderful.
be a reality TV show if we were a family.
Yeah. Be very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so if you can't wait to see Andy presenting at the end of May, that resource is also available. And I'm just going to share my screen again and talk about some other resources that are available to everyone.
And feel free to reach out to me and Amanda before the May 1st adoption deadline. If you guys are in a tight panic, like I say, my bylaw sentences are just getting sent into council like for Monday. I just finished the report today. So yeah, like say there's a short window. If you haven't done a bylaw sentence yet, find out when your next council meeting is, because yeah, you should have that in place before your date of adoption there.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, so I've had the opportunity to work with Amanda and Andy in the East Kootenay, and we started with a program called Building a Legacy there, and it was supporting cold climate rural implementation of high performance building, namely step code. And since then, we've expanded to other regions of the province. So now I've really been focusing on northern BC, and we're just recognizing a training capacity gap and trying to fill some of that. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about that program and then other things that Community Energy Association and other organizations are offering. In the north, the Building a Legacy program is a collaboration of Canadian Home Builder Association in northern BC, and it's primarily funded by BC Hydro. My computer's still thinking. There we are. So some of the resources that are available through the Building a Legacy program, it's been refunded again. And so we have some upcoming building science workshops that are in person. There's going to be some builders breakfasts, and we'll also be looking that mid-construction blower door test that Andy talked about getting folks in to see an airtightness test before things are sealed up, before that drywall's on, so you have an opportunity to fix the problems. And then you have your plumber on site and maybe your drywaller and your cider and all those other subtrades to recognize that of those three metrics, the airtightness and the mechanical efficiency and the design of the envelope, what can they affect on site? Airtightness is going to be the thing. So when they go and put a hole in the wall accidentally and they make a mistake, instead of covering that up quickly, go and tell somebody and get it fixed, and then see what a big difference that's going to make in that home's energy performance for the life of the home. There's supports for local governments with your communications, and there are a bunch of recorded webinars and case studies and technical booklets. And so if you have builders that maybe they need a basic understanding of airtightness, we have a 2-hour webinar on airtightness. There's a 3-part series on mechanical system design. There's marketing high performance homes. There's a bunch of things on there. It's all free. I usually give my little spiel at the beginning for 15 or 20 minutes, but the nice thing about the recording is you can just skip past that and get to the meat of the content and get in there. So that's available to you. I mentioned the upcoming in-person web workshops. So we're going to be doing a Mind the Gaps tour with Mark Bernhardt and Joe Hart, and we'll be in Prince George on May 12th, and then Smithers on June 20th and Dawson Creek on June 23rd. And that's going to be looking at preventing failures in HVAC and airtightness. And there's more of those happening in other parts of the province that I'm aware of as well. And that's through CHBA. So if you are looking for those kind of events, they are available. I mentioned those webinars that are on the Building a Legacy North site. There's also a cold climate heat pump and a best practices for working with an energy advisor. To go along with that best practices for working with an energy advisor, we worked with Mark Bernhardt and some others, Casey, and we built a roadmap to a high performance home. So this little 3-page PDF that's available on the site there, it talks about what your steps are going to be for new construction, and then also what it would be for a retrofit assessment, and what kind of information you would be providing to your energy advisor as a builder so that you can stop the back and forth. So that was something we heard last week at the BREBC presentations, was that if we can get everyone that's involved in the build to be talking in advance and doing an integrated design process, just some pre-planning, and talk about what those energy efficiency goals are, you can save a lot of time and back and forth. And this is a new case study, one of the case studies that's available on the YouTube site, the CEA Building a Legacy YouTube playlist, which also includes one case study from a few years ago that stars Andy Christie. This happens to star Bruce Murdoch of K Country Homes in Cranbrook, and he's built something that is the zero carbon performance and net zero. And if I'm going to test my capacity of my computer to see if we can play this 4-minute case study for you to show you, just give an example of one of the resources that's available to you if you like to take advantage of it.
Local home builder here in Cranbrook, BC, and I've been here for about 30 years building homes, and my primary focus now in the last few years is on energy efficient homes. The BC Step Code is a process that will take us 5 steps from now until 2032, in which our homes have to be built to be what they call net zero ready, which is 80% better than the 2018 building code. I would say one of the greatest challenges we have is the learning curve. We have a lot of trades are having to experience new products, different ways of doing things, whether it's from the framing or from the HVAC. That's probably one of our biggest challenges. The other one is the learning curve on economics, so that we can build these things affordably. This building is a 2-dwelling unit, 2 stories above for 1 unit, and then there's a basement unit as well. We focused on 3 particular areas. One is air tightness, the other is high thermal values of the envelope, and the third is the mechanical systems, heating and hot water. It's built with SIPs, which are structural insulated panels, very high thermal values, R40 in the basement, R30 on the other floors. Triple glazed windows, we built it very square because that's the most energy efficient way to build it. And then it's all electric, and so our mechanical systems are heat pumps and heat pump hot water, And it just basically draws the heat from the air in the mechanical room and puts it into the water and recycles it. And that's kept our energy usage down. And then on top of that, we've added the solar panels to bring us to net zero. To get this house to net zero ready, if we're not having any energy production, the cost of energy of this house would be just under half of what a code-built house would be. And then what we do with the solar panels, we make up the difference and produce that half that's required. Any solar power we generate, it goes back into the grid, and then we pull it back and at an equal value. And so it's coming back and forth, and it's giving us the electricity. The greater your thermal values, the lower your requirements for solar. But there is a trade-off and a point where it becomes uneconomical to increase thermal value. It's key that we use an energy advisor who is able to give us a heating and cooling load estimate based on a model for every single room. And that way the refrigeration technician who is going to specify the heating system can come up with exactly what we need. And then we can say, well, what happens if we change this? Or what if we change that? If we go from double glazed to triple glazed, what's that going to do? And so that's where they become very valuable, because that way we can do our costing the most economical way. The labor aspect of the structural insulated panel is probably about half of what it would be for standard wood construction. The other advantage, of course, is that your project moves more quickly and your cost of interest and so on during construction is lowered. So now is the time to get on, because we're going to see demand come up, as well as the requirement mandated dates for upping our energy efficiency. So it's the living experience that's really the biggest thing that's noticeable about this. You don't have any drafts anywhere like you will in an older home. You don't get the same radiance of cold or heat off the windows, so you're more comfortable near the windows. They're healthy because of the way that we're filtering air. They're quiet, but they're economical as well. You're not going to have any energy costs forever.
So one of the webinars we have on the Building a Legacy North website also features Bruce talking about the building of that home and before it was finished. So if that's interest to you, that's on that website as well. And now let me just bring my PowerPoint back up. I'm not monitoring the chat, so if there's any questions that pertain to me right now that you'd like to just unmute and ask, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, I'm just going to
Stephen might have a
continue on.
question, but he just said question, so I don't know what question he asked. I could answer it in the chat, but I don't know what it is. So
Okay.
if Stephen, if you have your question, you can ask Gaetan. I think he's asking about gaps in exterior plywood. Is there anything in regards to the spacing?
That sounds like a Mandy or Andy question.
Yeah, other than the code requirement for settlement for the 3/16 gap between sheets, I think your air barrier, if your exterior air barrier should cover all that, no problem, and still have a gap between your sheeting.
Great.
I'm not
Thanks,
sure if that's your
Andy.
specific question, Stephen. We got it.
So we got it. Great. Thank you very much. CEA is creating a quick reference right now. I sent it out to many of you who had already signed up previously, and then my colleague said, wait, we need to make a few changes to that. So it is still being perfected, updated, and once that's available, we'll be putting it on the Building a Legacy North website and just making it generally available, just as a quick reference to say, this is what energy step code is, and this is what zero carbon step code is. So that's coming. And then just to direct your attention to some other step code resources, the BC Green Building Calendar has a bunch of events that come up. that are all compiled from different industry organizations from around the province. So that's a really good hub to go and take a look if you're looking for any sort of training. The CHBA training online and in person. So now we know that there's 8 modules that are going to be required for licensed builders on step code training, and those are available online from CHBA. There are also, of course, we know the value of in-person training, and would encourage you to look for those in-person events if they're available in the region. I'm doing a few more step code office hours. If this today wasn't enough for you and you wanted to spend some more time with me, I'm going to be around tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then there's some other events, I think on the 24th as well. It's just an informal chat where we can talk about step code. I could probably point you to more resources. And if you haven't already gotten it, I could give you Amanda and Hugo and Andy's email addresses, and just talk about, I'm going to be there. So if you're welcome to join me in those sessions. And then, of course, there's a step code monthly newsletter that you can join. And those are always the most current, up-to-date things that are going on, and also pointing to different training events and things. And then I just quickly want to mention the step code peer network that CA runs. In 2022, there was 186 local government staff from 99 AHJs that participated in one or more of our meetings. We have quarterly meetings. We have deep dives into topics that our participants say that is of great interest and concern, and we go into those. We have working groups, and then there's also implementation cohorts. So one that's brand new that's coming up is the zero carbon implementation cohort, and that will be bringing together local governments that are thinking about zero carbon step code and making that what level they're going to make it mandatory at, or when they're going to adopt it and how they're going to do it, with the idea that we're going to have some collaboration and sharing of ideas, just like we've already seen in the chat today. And we also have some regional collaborations. So these clusters, there's a Thompson Okanagan one that's going to be looking at shared priorities in the building industry capacity. In Northern BC, we have NorthCan, so the Northern Climate Action Network, and that also includes industry representatives. There's Vancouver Island and Coast, and there are others. And so if these sort of things and that collaboration among local governments is of interest to you and would be of use, my colleague Lisa Mack is here today. She's part of that programming, and you can email her. Perhaps you can put the Peer Network's email in the chat, Lisa, for people to get a hold of you. And then just quickly, we've been working on we're calling it a tracker. So it's a web database and dashboard that's going to be tracking local government climate action plans and implementation. And then the current priority action areas are this zero carbon step code, existing building retrofit actions, and electric mobility actions. That is launching soon. So the idea being that local governments can go in and see what other local governments throughout the province are doing, maybe what's happening in regional governments, and that information is right there and ready to go. And that would hopefully open up some collaboration opportunities and sharing that information a little bit easier. And that's really it for me today. I'm going to stop sharing my slide, and we have a bit more time for, oh no, we don't. We're at time. Oh no, we have no more time to have questions, but I really appreciate all of your participation today, and invite you to enjoy some of those resources that were shared. And thanks very much again to the speakers, Hugo and Amanda and Andy. Thanks for your coming in and helping out with answering those technical questions. We really appreciate.
Thanks,
Well.
Jen.
Take care, everybody.